whatever, it's clearly you who's done it.
Yeah, because that mouse was eating well.
Welcome to Book Club.
Except instead of books, it's games.
Oh, and instead of a club, there's us two.
But the rest of the idea is 100% the same.
As every fortnight, we play one game solidly.
Then come here to talk about it.
And we want you to do the same.
All the games are retro.
Most of them are SEGA.
Some of them we've never played.
Or, we've just forgotten we've played them.
Because we're old.
Because we're old! Because we're old.
Because we're old.
The Book Club has one central theme.
We play retro games for their quality.
Games that deserve to still be played.
There are some bonus old man memories to be had, but you don't need nostalgia if the game is awesome.
We're going to prove it.
In the Book Club.
Hello and welcome to Book Club for one of, if not the greatest ever episode. Sorry, episodes that are yet to come, but can you match this one? I don't know, we'll see. Anyway, I'm Bedgell and this is Dibbs Ahoy. Hello, Dibbs Ahoy.
Hello, Bedgell. How's it going?
It's going all right. I feel like we've been hanging around each other long enough. I could just call you Dibbs now. Well, Dib. Yeah.
Dropping that second name, huh?
Yeah.
Fair enough.
And you guys in the chat, feel free to make up your own name. Schmuckhead, something like that. I don't know.
What's with the brutality?
I know. These normally start out so positive, don't they? I'm trying to
I know. Go back to where you were saying the uncomfortable compliments.
You're a very handsome man. There you go.
Thank you.
Smoothly
very
done.
Good. Yeah, that's better.
Hey, you know what else is handsome? Look, you know what's coming, don't you? Because you've got a sense of my smoothness now. You know what else is coming? That's not smooth. You know what else is handsome? That's what I said. Today's game. What are we playing?
Cha-ching! I notice I always make that noise when I hold up the game.
See, it's because you're from QVC. We've said this before.
Of course. Gunstar Heroes on the Mega Drive. I'm moving it side to side because I notice sometimes in the video when I hold it up, it gets underneath the logo that's in the middle of the screen and I can't remember what side it is. So I'm just going to do that. So, side to side. Yes, Gunstar Heroes on the Mega Drive.
We'll point out for the listeners that you were just holding out QVC style and randomly waving it in front of your face. The thing I notice about you doing that is the way it caught the light. That puppy is absolutely mint. Don't be telling me that's your original copy.
It is, yeah.
Jeez.
I got it a couple months after release, and that's my original bad boy. I picked up £20 because for some reason it always felt to me like when Gunstar came out, it's like as legendary as it is now. It was kind of a little bit unappreciated at the time.
It was.
And it was like within a very short time period, it was down to 20 quid already. And I was like, well, I'm getting that game for sure because of I'd already played it around Chris's house and it was amazing. It was like one of the most mind-blowing games I'd ever seen on the Mega Drive. And I was like, well, I ain't letting that slip through my hands. So,
yeah, it is totally nuts. And I've never been able to explain it, but it was a real thing at the time. I guess, bearing in mind, we were kind of in a very strong period. I mean, the Mega Drive was really flying high. And I can only explain it by the way of there was just a lot going on. And so people had a lot of choice. And maybe just the style of it. I don't know. Anything I say doesn't make sense. So,
you know what? I guess saying that, it came out the same month as Mortal Kombat, Street Fighter 2 Special Champion Edition, and Rocket Knight Adventures. So it was in that kind of mix of pretty iconic, legendary games.
A bit swamped.
Yeah.
Obviously for us, not swamped. We were just awed, amazed, impressed, in love. But I think that's right though. Trying to put myself in other shoes, it's like Mortal Kombat, Street Fighter, a kind of grown. If you're a teenager trying to be all grown up, you're playing those. And this is cartoony and colourful, and
very Japanese in style.
First impressions may be thrown off. Well, we've dived in because obviously we know it. I'm sure everyone watching and listening knows what it is, but let's, for posterity, say what is it? What are we talking about? What is Gunstar Heroes? What are we yamming on about?
I mean, at its core, it's a run and gun game, isn't it? Where you're traversing various platforms, taking on smaller enemies, and then you kind of leading through to the traditional bosses. But the thing is, this is like, as we say actually quite regularly on the show, they've ramped it up to 11. It's like, this is like something like I'd never seen.
No.
It was just like, it blew my mind. It was just, it defied your expectations of the Mega Drive. It was just on some other level, and I just couldn't believe what I was seeing, really. So, yeah, but like,
I was going to let you run there and see how many different ways you could on another level define expectations. Got any more in there? It was. I can't think of any.
I'll save them. I need them in reserve for later.
Yeah, this is an episode
get lavished with prestige.
We need a special hyperbole thesaurus for this game. But yeah, it is a run and gun.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of, because a way it does that, I mean, a lot of run and gun games would ramp up the gun options, and they would have lots of different ways you could shoot, different lasers, missile launchers, and that. So that's obviously Gunstar Heroes does that, and it does it very well. But it also ramped up the run options, because you slide and you jump and you throw, and there's other stuff in the mix in every single angle, isn't there? So
well, as well, they kind of even mix up that like simple option with the fixed shot and the free shot as well. So it's like, the free shot, you can run and kind of like just keep firing at your will, but like the fixed shot, when you hit that fire button, your character then stays in place, which kind of doesn't sound like very appealing, and at first I didn't use that at all until I realized that was probably my preferred option, because you want to then be accurate with what you're aiming for, and if you're constantly moving, it's kind of harder to do. So, and you can still move with the fixed shot, like, because you can kind of jump forward and like kind of be moving in that way, but it's definitely like, it's got a more strategic element.
Definitely changes. It puts an angle on it, doesn't it? Gives you another way to play.
And I'd never seen such a thing before. It was like, they really had thought their way through giving the player options.
And I think for that reason, I did read about them. They really battled with which of those to do, because they kind of developed it in both ways, and obviously in the end we got the choice. But they really battled with it, because I think they sensed people would struggle to know how to interpret it and maybe wouldn't like it. But as ever, choice is good. Give people choice.
Yeah, really good. Yeah. I mean, it's like I switched to fixed shot when I was kind of almost ready for it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
It's like I went to the kind of the thing that was my natural pick, and I was kind of like, oh yeah, this is cool, but actually, you know what? I do see the benefits of being on fixed shot, and then I switched, and then it changed my whole gameplay. And it's like, just that kind of depth was just a
revelation.
It was really. Yeah.
Dude, am I finishing your sentences? Have we reached that point?
It's good. I need the help.
For some couples it's romantic. For us, it's just suggesting we're falling apart at the seams. There's a question that just it kind of crops up. So I don't know. There's loads of different ways you could ask it. So I'll go with this. Is it an important game? Because you touched it at the start. It's like when it came out, like the reception, the magazines like we read, they definitely like rated it, but the reception wasn't.
Not all of them.
Yeah, not all of them. That's a good point.
Yeah,
and that, like, it wasn't. There wasn't really a massive buzz in the way, in the way there was a Street Fighter buzz. I mean, obviously there was in certain magazines. So, at the time, and now, is an important game. What do you reckon?
I mean, it is, in terms of the fact that kind of like, while it did have that kind of like quite subdued, slow start, it kind of felt like it's now become a legendary game.
Yeah,
and it's like I think in the years that followed, it kind of gradually gathered steam and started to get acknowledged for what it was, and that how groundbreaking and incredible it actually was. But it took time for some reason for websites and magazines or whatever to cotton on to it. And actually, I wonder if like maybe that there is a touch of it with what's it called? Alien Soldier.
Yeah.
Because like I was saying to you before we started recording, like Mean Machine, Sega, they reviewed Alien Soldier, and then after a month or so of playing it, they felt like they needed to re-review it because of like it had certain depths to it that they didn't encounter on those kind of early playthroughs and stuff, and they felt like they weren't kind of giving it its due credit. And like they re-reviewed it later down the line, and then gave it like a more fitting review score. And like, I kind of wonder a bit if like Gunstar was a bit like that, you know. It's like, it was incredible, but like, and again, I kind of find it a little bit hard to kind of comprehend, but I've read a lot of people who played it at the time who weren't blown away like we were, and it took a little while for it to grow on them, and maybe that's why it was a little bit more of a slow burner. It's like I say, like the game was reduced so quickly to £20. Like literally, I got that copy like a couple of months probably after its release. I could not believe it. Like games, do you remember Pele on the Mega Drive? It was like a football game that was absolutely terrible. It got like, I can't exactly remember the review score, but it's one of the lowest review scores I ever saw in Meme Machines, and that was there for like a tenner. And it was like among those games, it was like 20 quid, so it was a little bit more, but it was like, that was the caliber of game that they were kind of like, that game sucks. You know, no one wants it, put the price down, let's get these things shipped.
And remember, this is still where Mega Drive was going great guns, so the shops, they didn't need to be slashing prices that quickly. Stuff would sell. So yeah, it's weird. I do think, you know, every like Treasure love I was gonna say gimmick. Treasure love a hook. You know, in their gameplay, they always have a hook, don't they? Obviously, for Gunstar, there's about 50 different small hooks. For, you know, like Silhouette Mirage, they've got like crazy, like swapping the gameplay around. Radiant Silvergun with the bullets, Ikaruga with the score system, and I don't know, Dynamite Heady even with the way like you attack and stuff. Everything's got a hook, and they're not always the easiest to get on with when you first play in. And I don't know, maybe with Gunstar a little bit, like it can be very hard if you kind of let it overwhelm you and you try and like treat it like a traditional shooter, and you know, you can get pretty much annihilated if you sort of dawdle and don't kind of go to it. And yeah, I don't know, maybe it just didn't click with people, but you're right, initial reception was let's say lukewarm, and yet today it feels really important. So like, what are those things that made it important? Because it's sort of, it's really now like a linchpin in our heads, but like what for, I guess why, like unpack a bit, because not everyone has gone through this and experienced it. So I guess like what makes it important for us, and you know, why would we argue it's important for everyone, I guess.
Well, I mean, it was just like, it's a complete package. It's like, it's got everything. It's like, you know, the people who are into like graphics and stuff like that, it's got that ticked. Like like I say, it was doing stuff that on the Mega Drive that you didn't even think was possible. I mean, these guys were like masters of unlocking the potential of that 68,000 or something, which was like one of the big draws for them, even making this game for the Mega Drive. It's like, you know, they just thought they could get certain things out of it that like tick the boxes, that just meant that they could pull off their vision for this game. It's like, it had that. It had the gameplay is just fantastic. It's like, you know, the depth, you know, the variety of guns, the combinations of guns when you pick up the two different orbs and they all mix together and do like, you know, different things. It's like, it's got a melee side to it. It's like, you know, you got the slide, you got the jump in attached, you can grab stuff out of the air, like, you know, the enemies or bombs and things like that. It's just like, it's just variety in like an absolute abundance and stuff. And it's like, yeah, you could tell this is in my top 10 of games of all time.
I mean, yeah, can we restrain ourselves? The abundance is a huge thing though, isn't it? I mean, it was obviously, people unlocked more and more out the Mega Drive as time went on, but this I'm struggling to think of anything that really kind of matched this out of any title for just what it just seemed to do. You know, like what modern devs and homebrew guys are doing with the Mega Drive, with their modern dev kits and their like modern power apps and stuff, and more memory, crucially. Like it's like one of those. It seems to do things that just made no sense for like consoles at the time. And I was thinking when you just said that about, they did love the 68,000. You read a lot of devs love that 68,000, but the stuff that Treasure said about it, and you know, interviews we've read with that Masato Maigwa, I wish we'd had him back in the day, because he kind of slams on the SNES, to be honest. He's like, you know, when we were trying to have these arguments with the Nintendo fanboys, he could have been a useful puppy to have in our corner. That's all I'm saying. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
But I mean, we were obviously impressed by it, and I guess it's true. Like Sega are impressed by it as well, because they
eventually they were, yeah.
Yeah, eventually. And that's the story we've got to tell, isn't it? Because it is a game. Like, put it this way, these days you look back and it feels like Sega and Treasure had, and I don't know whether you can say have, but had a very special relationship, because there weren't many third parties that over an extended period of time really seemed to stick by Sega and like help them out. Most of the others flitted off to Nintendo or PlayStation or in some way, and Treasure really did. And it kind of goes back to the start and what happened with this, but at the same time it nearly didn't get made. So tell us, Dibbs Ahoy, what happened?
Okay. So
it's like the beginning of Jackanory, wasn't it? So let's go down into the deep dark woods. Dibbs Ahoy, what have you got for us?
No, stop it! You're scaring me. Anyway, basically, most of the guys who were at Treasure at the time were former Konami employees. So basically, there was like a whole host of them, and they were very skilled actually. I mean, it's like some of the technical accomplishments they were pulling off in some of these games were like amazing, and you can see that definitely spill into Gunstar Heroes, and then like ramp up even more perhaps. But so I think it was the main producer guy, wasn't it? So Masato Maegawa, did I say that right? Probably not, but
I'll tell you what we should do. Let's pronounce it a different way every time we say it, and then one of them is bound to be right. Yeah, that's good.
Yes.
I figured that was the plan.
Yeah, but he basically was the guy spearheading this kind of whole thing, like, and getting a whole load of guys together, and they were kind of, were they like frequenting coffee shops, basically coming up with all the designs for this game that was eventually going to be Gunstar Heroes, and they were a bit fatigued with sequel syndrome, I suppose, going on at Konami. So it's like, they didn't want to be working on like another Castlevania or whatever, all the big kind of Konami games at the time. And so they were like, putting together this idea for Gunstar Heroes, which they actually did pitch to Konami, and Konami weren't interested in it. So that was, I know, they could have been theirs, but so they basically took their ideas, formed their own little software house, and then went to Sega with it. And like I say, it was like, it wasn't an easy sell to Sega even. It was they were what was it? They contracted them out to do McDonald's Treasureland Adventure on the Mega Drive as to kind of prove themselves almost. They weren't kind of, greenlighting them, being like, you guys can make Mega Drive games, which just seems crazy with some of the Mega Drive games that are actually out there. Like I think I said earlier, like Back to the Future 3, which was like a few screens worth of terrible graphics. Like, man, it's like they were literally mugging people for 40 quid for that game. It's like, it's absolutely insane that they were. It just felt like they were just letting anyone who wanted to make a game make a game.
That's the
and
thing,
these guys are all
ex
Konami, and it's like they seem to face hurdle after hurdle.
It's like irony on irony, because what we say of Sega in that period, kind of like definitely the Saturn era, but that 93-94, they're well known for going on this massive recruitment drive, hiring anyone they could, pulling everyone from any department they could, like bringing the cleaner in and telling him to design the game and all that stuff. they went nuts, and they greenlit so much stuff on the back of a fag packet designs. And yet these dudes had worked up a full game proposal pitch with a heritage of working on Castlevania, on Contra III, on several other like franchises, and Konami themselves would have been a big name. So there's number one irony, that Sega are known for taking risks, and yet here they are with something that seemed almost de-risked, and they didn't do it. And then two, like, obviously, how long did they spend trying to woo Konami and like get Konami to come across? And like, obviously, around this time they had successfully started to land some Konami titles on there, as we were talking about in the last vid. But here's these guys that were, I don't know whether you could call them prominent Konami employees, but they were some lead devs or senior devs on important games, and they would turn them down. It's just, I don't know, it's just odd.
It's really
it's bizarre. Yeah.
It's like the whole thing of Gunstar Heroes feels a bit weird. It's like, I mean, the Western release of it was like in real jeopardy. I think it got rejected by 12 Sega producers for a release in the West, I read. And like there was one guy, I think his name is Max Senna or something, if I'm pronouncing that right. Again,
Maxi
probably
boy.
not.
Yeah.
But no, I think Mac, M-A-C.
Mac, that's not what I said, but I'm going to pretend it was Mackie
it's
boy.
Close
Yeah.
enough, yeah. But like, apparently he was like one guy who kind of saw the potential in it, and it's like, I don't know if it was the quirky Japanese kind of like flair that it had or something like that, because I suppose it is kind of weird, like, in the first stage alone, I suppose you fight a tree as a kind of mid-level boss or something like that. Do you know that thing that's dropping and there's a big caterpillar?
It's like one of the wacky inflatable arm waving tree men or whatever it's called. Yeah.
yeah, it is a bit like that, yeah. But it's like, I mean, surely they could see like the quality. I don't know. Really,
I really feel like it's one of those things. Like, you remember wind the clock forward a couple of years, and when everyone had just become so insanely polygon obsessed, and so any old crap with polygons would get greenlit, and no matter how good your sprite-based game looked, it seemed to be out of fashion. And I think some of the stuff with Gunstar is that people said, I'm sure I read this, you're like, oh, the sprites are a bit small. And I'm like, yeah, there's like a million of them on screen at once, but sure, the sprites are a bit small. And it's like, I guess it's another run and gun. There were quite a lot. I don't know. It's hard to really put yourself in their mindset, but yeah, definitely true. It got rejected. I mean, I think they said they pitched it to Sega in 92. So they first they left Konami and were kind of out on their arse, basically. They didn't have a project, they didn't have funding, they didn't have an office, they didn't have anything. They'd obviously really taken a pump with this thing, and they had this little bundle of ideas, which, what were they calling it? Lunatic Gunstar?
Yeah.
Wait, yeah, Lunatic
Gunstar. Yeah, something like that, yeah.
Yeah, and like they took it to the Sega producer who rejected it, and basically said, look, essentially prove yourself, here's this McDonald's game, go and make that.
Yeah,
it must have been. Then again, you leave Konami, you're trying to set up on your own. That's not a bad franchise to be given to cut your teeth. If you know what I mean, it's like still got to have some money behind it, wouldn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And I'd be interested to kind of go back and play it, actually, because I didn't really give it much thought, because it was, well, I mean, at the time it was a McDonald's game. It's like, who cares about that? So it's like we never really gave it much mind, but actually I wonder if
I feel like it's decent. Kind of solid and like responsive and looks quite nice, but it sort of has, brace yourself kids, it sort of has James Pond feels to it, that kind of platformer where it's a little bit like paint by numbers, collect stuff, but then it has a few mechanics on top of that, so it's kind of like not, that's obviously even making the link is a bit cruel to a game, but yeah, I guess just a bit bland, but yeah, it has its upsides. So they pitched it, they made that, they were obviously like okay with what they did on it, but I think the main thing was they split their team of who they had and they made them in parallel, which we've talked about this story before, and I always had the impression it was like that they made the McDonald's game and then were greenlit to go and make Gunstar, but apparently they did both at the same time, and I think got it as far as Seven Force. Is that the right name for him? The boss that has the
Seven Force. Yeah.
And then took that back, and then I think when the producers saw that, and they were like, okay, that's really bloody impressive. That's when it kind of got properly.
And it really is. Yeah. I mean, that's like, that was one of the standout things, just seeing that Seven Force and just changing form and the different variety of bosses that you were then fighting. It was just like, you just didn't know what you were going to be facing next, but you knew that it was going to be like, pretty rough going and definitely technically impressive, and they all were. It was like amazing.
Well, let's go bosses, because we're in it. We're in it. Like, you find yourself in the game. We've stumbled across the bosses, and now we've got a battle on. But that was it. You never knew what you were going to get. I mean, Seven Force is the classic example of it. But with any of them, I suppose in any other game, you come across a boss, however big or small he is, you just have a sense of what it's going to do straight from the off, And I'm not sure with any single one of the bosses if you could really guess what their attack pattern was going to be. They're not necessarily all hard, but they're all like, what's the tree guy, and he just chucks a load of seeds up in the air or something, doesn't it? And the seeds just rain down on you. I can't remember because he always gets killed so quickly. The very first sort of mini boss.
Oh that's in the first stage. Yeah, that's
Do you know
not
what I mean?
part of the 7 Force, but I know
like,
what you mean.
wait, just different bosses.
Yeah,
but
sure. Yeah.
But do you know what I mean? Even when they're easy, you still can't guess what they're going to be like. Is the point.
Yeah, because that's the thing. When he drops the seeds, you're then shooting them. You think, oh, this is all I have to do, and then suddenly this massive caterpillar grows out of the ground. So it's like, oh, hello, what's this all about? Sort of thing. But like the 7 Force, I mean, it's so. It just keeps you on your toes, and it's like, you know what I mean? It's like you get to an end of stage boss in any other kind of game, and then you've got 7 of them to contend with. It's like learning boss patterns and trying to figure out what's going on, and it was just like, the technical feat that they kind of pulled off with that thing as well was just like, oh man, I could not believe what I was seeing. It was like amazing. And this was all against this backdrop of this minecart level as well. There was just like, I mean, there must have been some blast processing and a half going on in that scene, because like this is like shooting by so fast. I mean, that level kind of starts off and it's kind of like you gradually getting going, and then suddenly it kicks into overdrive, and this background is zipping by like you couldn't believe, and it's just wow. It's just the whole thing. It was just like, it was almost overwhelming, but just so incredible. That
just on the cusp, isn't it? They take you to the bit where you're overwhelmed, and then just keep it on the edge of that the whole time. I do feel like with the minecart level though, that bit where it goes slow, I always felt like they're playing with you a little bit. Like it's almost like, here's what a level looks like in every other game. Here's our version. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, and in fact, I guess they do it in every level. It's probably not that, but it always seems like at the start when you're just sort of pootling along on that very first level. There's a few enemies come along. It's all kind of gentle, and then it's just kicks off, and it just then never stops. It's just
I know. It's just like incredible.
But I mean, the bosses, like gameplay wise, they're just so fast, so fluid. It's just like it never misses a beat, it never stops a breath, and that's like, and I guess same as we said with the exhilaration, they are just on the cusp of being really hard, but just accessible enough. So say like 7 Force, we kind of just every time he changes form and chucks the new attack at you, you can just about react to it in time, save yourself, like the very first time, and then obviously as you learn it a bit, you get more precise and stuff. And that's so kind of satisfying, isn't it? Like how you feel like you can take him on and have a go at it, and obviously you die the first time, but then you're like, no, I could get him. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you're immediately clicking back into that level if you die, don't you?
Yeah.
Like, I'll get him this time.
Yeah. Now you have to remind me, because I don't mean to show off, but when I was playing it through, I beat that sucker on the first go through. I mean,
You had it on easy, didn't you?
Yeah.
I'm kidding.
But the question I was going to ask was, am I right in thinking if you like when you play him, he doesn't follow the same pattern? Like he will vary like his forms?
Yeah, it always mixes it up. And as far as I remember, I think if you play it on easy, you don't face him that many times. You get like maybe 3 iterations. I might be wrong with my numbers here, but this is what I'm remembering. I think on the medium setting, you probably face him like 5 times maybe, and then on the hard setting, you face him the full 7 times. Like so, you see every iteration of him, and it's kind of, it seems completely random, like which order he kind of like does each phase in. I don't think you ever get the same one twice, really.
Well, I wouldn't know because I completed it on the first go through. What can I say?
Like I say, easy.
Yeah. What's pathetic about this is if someone who's really good at games would just assume that's what you do, and I'm like, this is like the first time I've ever beaten a boss. And I said the first time through, this is like hundreds of times through.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Obviously, over lifetime. Go on.
I did read like that apparently you can beat the whole game without taking a hit, which seems impossible to me because it feels like literally taking hits is like part of the experience. It's like it's dialed in, but like, and whether or not that's done like with like some kind of tool assisted thing or something, like I don't know whether or not anyone's actually done it, but apparently you can beat it without taking a hit, so that's got to be some serious skill if that's possible.
We may come to it later, but there's a big scene around Cuphead, obviously like a modern like run and gun, which is to play it. It's well known for being like a rock solid, brutally hard game, which is like just play and die, that sort of game. But there's also a scene on Twitch for playing it through without taking a hit, and it's like, I mean, you watch that and there's some real bullet hell moments. But I reckon with Gunstar, I can see it because we were talking earlier about on bosses and during the levels, it does kind of flatter and bamboozle you quite a lot by chucking a lot of stuff at you, but the actual number of bullets coming at you is not as... So say at any one time there might be, say, 10 of the Zako characters on screen, all sort of like jumping about, looking like they're going to get you, but actually only maybe 1 or 2 of them are shooting you.
Okay, yeah.
And I sort of think, I guess if you follow it through, there's not that much crazy like dodging bullets to actually go on. So
yeah, I suppose the actual like gunfire, I suppose, is kind of not as much as the characters that are buzzing around the screen. I suppose that's the thing. It's like the movement of the, you know, the number of sprites all moving around you is the thing that kind of like feels like a little bit like, oh man, I'm gonna get it in a minute or something like that. But you can, there's only a couple that actually go for you, I suppose, and then you can have the time to take the rest of them out.
I'm just like, that is exactly how it makes me feel. Oh man, I'm gonna get it now. It's like every time you go to a new scene, like, you know, the bit at the end of the first level where the dude comes along in the big red like walker thing.
Panel,
yeah.
Yeah, I'll make for now. This kid who used to hang out with looks exactly like the guy who drives that machine.
And when that comes along, that is exactly what you think, doesn't it? Oh man, I'm gonna get it now. It's like when Seven Force comes along, when any of the bosses come along, except for old Smash Dasakai, whatever his name was. What's he called in the English one again?
I think it's just Colonel Red.
Colonel Red.
According to the back of the box, that was easy to say. But he is just called Colonel Red in the Western release. So yeah,
it's not that imaginative, but yeah. Apart from when he comes along, obviously he's a bit of light relief most of the time, isn't he? So, but yeah, the bosses, and I guess the other thing they did, so gameplay wise, they're great, but graphically, that was they were really the thing that the magazines took hold of. But it was known for the bosses at the time, wasn't it? And like, you know, tell us about some of the tricks it did, because they're worth going into, because they still look great.
Yeah, I mean, well, like I say, I mean, at the time, it was doing stuff that you'd been told the Mega Drive couldn't do. It was doing like some kind of scaling or rotation. Like, you know, I always remember, what was that guy's name? He was I think it was like, I can't remember if my wording is exactly correct, but it was some kind of Guardian defense system. It's that kind of like green balls like made out of man, and he's running against the red background, and the background's like rotating, and he's running, and all this stuff. There's flames everywhere, and this thing is like, you know, he's going into the background, he's coming forward. It was just like, there was just things going on that you just was like, this is running on the Mega Drive. I thought my Mega Drive was going to catch fire, like trying to do stuff like this or something. And it was like, you know, they got all this stuff. I think it's like an 8 meg cartridge or something like that. It's like, you know, it's not like
they just use a lot of small sprites, and it's coding. You know, it's not. It's,
yeah, I mean, they were wizards, these guys. I mean, it was just wow.
So I forget which one of them he was talking about, but so there's an interview with Micah, and he's talking about the dev that made it. I think it's Tsuganami who did the like enemy characters. Let's say it was anyway. It's one of them, but he was literally just for a month. He spent like a month doing like one of the bosses. I'm gonna guess it was Seven Force, but no, it was the Running Man of Seven Force, just that one iteration. They said like he was pulling like all-nighters, like going to bed at 4 a.m, like tearing his hair out, and then just one day he cracked it, and he worked out how to make it work. And it is all that like multiple sprites combined, and then just very intricate programming to make them you can imagine what they did, take these two completely unrelated sprites. The Mega Drive doesn't think they're the same thing. The Mega Drive just thinks they're different sprites and make them move in concert with each other.
And that was, I think, one of the things that we kind of was talking about in Rocket Knight. I think some of their bosses used those kind of techniques, didn't they? Because they kind of moved in the same kind of way, and you could imagine them as being separate parts and stuff like that, but all tied together into one kind of big boss and that. So you could definitely see the kind of almost the heritage, I guess.
You could doing. And I think it's we were talking before, it seems like they had us kind of schooling in some really, they were just clever programmers, and I say they were, but I love that stuff. It's still fun now seeing homebrew people doing it, but back then, any time that they unlocked a new trick, so you see that Ranger X, with its 3D background effects, they're amazing, and they must have done it by basically replacing the background panel several times. So obviously, as you remember it, you kind of go past a tunnel, and as you kind of come towards it, you can see down the tunnel. And the only way they could have done it, they must have just used lots of different background planes and kept replacing them. Again, just clever programming. And what was it? Golden Axe, the dragons and stuff were they were a background plane as well, weren't they? Instead of a sprite. Remember when the massive dragon head comes on the screen? Yeah, because that would have been huge for a sprite, wouldn't it? Yeah. And I just think, and all of that programming is just it's so clever. But they were saying, you couldn't have done it on the SNES. They were just saying the way the Mega Drive kind of allows you to just pump. It doesn't have as much, but it lets you pump it through quickly. Was the way I understood.
Right. That's that. Yeah.
Pump processing.
What is that? What comes after blast processing?
Yeah, it's like blast processing's here, pump processing. Yeah. I don't know what's above it.
That's the next level.
Yeah. But there's probably technically minded people going, you two are a couple of idiots. But look, obviously, Dibbs and I understand the technical detail. We're just trying to make it digestible by calling it pump processing. We're not just
a couple of idiots sitting here babbling, not knowing what we're talking about.
So when you said that, I just remember the shit we were talking about before we started. I'm thinking, we really are. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But there's another clever thing I got to chuck in at that point, right? Because obviously the bosses, so Seven Force we keep going on about, not the second boss, is it? It's the second level boss. The guy that's made up of cardboard box looking things. He's the real, I remember he was in the magazines all the time. Do you remember that one? He is the articulated man. He's made up of little boxes. Can't remember. Is he the first level? Second level? I can't remember. Anyway, they're all very clever, but those graphical tricks stand out. But there's one that I kind of never really clocked, and genuinely until we were prepping for this, which was around the Zako. Do you remember we were talking about that before? So I'd never even heard of Zako. So me too. I'm gonna tell you this in the style as if I know all about it, and you can pretend that I didn't just learn about it about a week ago. Yeah,
so and I'll pretend I knew about it, even though you told me about
Zako.
20 minutes ago.
Oh yeah, sure. Zako.
Yes, I know exactly what that is.
That dude from Hollyoaks, right? You just sound. I'm just going to move on. Right. So Zako apparently in Japanese means small fry. It's kind of like the kind of grunty enemies that you generally just defeat in one hit, one shot, whatever. The churny enemies. And we'll probably make this link again, but in shmups, it's the little basic spaceships that fly on the screen and you just tick them off, tick, tick, tick like that. They're like Zako, small fry enemies. And what they said was they just poured loads of time into making the Zako interesting. So they gave them personalities, and I can't remember the number. It was something high, 100 different actions that the Zako do. Apparently, the Zako do more things, as in they have more sprite animations than the main characters, and because they kind of, you see them you encounter them and they're mucking around and they'll sort of see you and they'll be shocked and they'll run off, and some of them will jump on the screen and others will chuck bombs and some of them will slide at you and some of them will shoot at you, and it's all crazy basic. It's still kind of Zako stuff, this sort of real basic behaviours, but because there's so much of it going on, it feels like they're actually really clever. So when you're doing any of the levels, there's loads of enemies coming at you. You feel like it's an orchestrated attack. And it's really just loads of random sprites doing random things. And it's just, I've played it through after reading it, and I genuinely felt different. I was like, man, this is so clever. The way it's so simple is why it's so clever, because they just gave them that extra little bit. You know, you take like, I'm sure we'll come back to Contra 3, but you take Contra 3, the enemies really just don't do anything. It's like there's a guy in a turret, he shoots that way. There's a dog, he waits for you to go past, he runs after you. Do you know what I mean? They've all kind of got a very fixed kind of NPC, kind of one-dimensional thing. Whereas Gunstar characters feel really alive.
Yeah.
And I just think it's a trick. You know, they're not that much more complicated. There's just...
I think that is the thing, and I'll probably, like, after what you just said, probably the next time I play it, I'll probably like look out for those kind of things a little more, because it's funny, because when you were saying about it, it's like I do acknowledge it, I just never dwelt on it, I suppose. Exactly. But it's one of those details that give me the sense of life in the game and that.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
it's like and they do, as a result almost of what you're doing, perhaps maybe it alters what they kind of do, because you do kind of get then experience like gunfire and their behavior like alter, and you getting shot at from different trajectories and stuff like that perhaps, and it's like, you know what I mean, it just it gives it that sense of being different all the time, and like I say, it's kind of like there's life in there. This game is alive, and the guys are like doing these things, like, you know, and it's interesting. It
is just genius. I think all their games have that liveliness. I think Guardian Heroes is probably the only one where it has that similar vibe, but I guess because, you know, there's not many others that are like run and gun platformers. It's, you know, it's like that's a hack and slash. No, but do you know what I mean? It's like where there's other characters on screen, but the manic like fights you have on Guardian Heroes and the way the other characters seem to have really good AI, I think that's kind of, it's the same thing. It's like it's just clever programming to make it feel manic. They're still they're still very easy to kill. You know, they're still zako. They're still these small fried grunty enemies, but they just feels more satisfying. Yeah, it's genius. And it just sort of like exactly the same as you when you think about it, you knew it was going on, but you never really acknowledge it. That's just genius.
Yeah, it's a small touch that really adds up, I guess, isn't it? Yeah. Interesting.
I mean, that's definitely, I think the manic characters on screen, all the action ongoing, you know, that's a big part of why it's so playable. I mean, what else would you chuck in the mix? That, because you can tell we love it, you know, we're raving about it. What else would we pick out which does make it so good? Because why do we keep coming back to it? That, you know, what is? I
mean, like one of the things that like really stood out to me was the weapons that you pick up and the way that you're able to like mix and match stuff. It's like, you know, because like my go-to, like by default, was like the double flamethrower. I'm looking for those two flames, like orbs or whatever they are, and it's like, you know, that's what I'm after the whole time. But the other weapons are so interesting as well. It's like, you know, just combining like a flame and like the green one or the blue one or something like that, and then it makes like a homing attack or something, and it's just like, you know, there's like such variety in the way you can attack and things, and you know, and it is a little bit dependent on the drops that you get as well, I suppose. But like, you know, definitely like the homing ones are very well suited to certain situations that you know, the double flamethrower perhaps isn't, and that you're kind of like thinking like, you know, it's that constant like you're on your toes, like, shall I swap it out for that? Shall I do you know what I mean? And it's like, I mean, most of the time I do stick with the double flamethrower because it's so awesome.
You're talking
like,
a good game, dude, but I'm like,
it takes up like the whole screen, like most of the time. It's so good.
And it does look good as well. It's quite an impressive, and they're not obvious weapons, are they? You know, it's like, it's not just straight upgrades. It is a tactical mix and match, and like you say, the randomizing effect of the little robot bug things that drop different ones. Literally, you die and play again, and they will drop something different the second time round. It's real. But yeah,
and also if you fly and kick them, we used to just shoot them initially when we started playing. It would drop like 2.
Yeah,
then we realized if you then fly and kick them, it drops more stuff. That like doesn't occur if you keep shooting it. And we were like, oh look, keep doing that, and then like, you know, it gives you more chance.
It's just another little thing that made you feel like you were getting to be a bit of a boss at the game, because you're like, you plebs, you shoot them. But yeah. And I remember though, like it was last year sometime, and I picked it up for the first time in ages, and I was getting my ass whooped, and I phoned you because I was like mixing up different weapons and took a bit of advice.
Like the Sega hotline or something. That's some tasty prestige. Like, I'm stuck on this Sega game. I got to ring Dibbs. It's like, hello.
The wife's in the next room going, who's he ringing at 11 o'clock? Is he having an affair? What's going on? Yeah, I'm just talking to Dibbs about Gunstar Heroes. So, and it was, I think you did say to try the double flame, but it really it's different. They said, didn't they? So the different guns are different difficulty levels, and you can kind of, and I should have written it down, but didn't they? If I remember it, is they named the green homing like pulse lasery thing after Masato Maegawa, or a nickname they had for him, because that was the one he always played with, because he just wasn't good enough to like play the game like any of the others. So, which is, I don't know, that's cool, but it's true, like it adds a different difficulty to it, and they aren't just upgrades. Like some of them, the sort of shooting pattern just makes no sense at all, and it's almost makes it harder to pick it. And it's like, you know, it's sort of satisfying if you get it right, but it's a bit frustrating. And that's, I don't know, mixes it up.
And also the reaction of the enemies to your attacks as well. It's like it's almost like they took nothing for granted, like with the way that games operated and stuff. It's like, you know, you don't have like the enemy doesn't have like a big energy bar or something like that. And like most traditional bosses, it has this like big counter that kind of gradually ebbs its way down, and you have to kind of keep working it and like, you know, moving so you're not taking up the hits and stuff like that. And even that kind of felt different to me at the time. You know, it was like bosses always kind of felt like they had an energy bar, and it was like, and it is an energy bar effectively, but it was done in a kind of different way, if you know what I mean.
Well, they just did everything they could to make the game feel pacey, and watching a 4,000 like crash down towards 0, that felt so much quicker and cooler than an energy bar sort of ebbing away, didn't it? So just another subtle little thing, wasn't it? But I guess you could chuck a bunch of things in, but I guess, you know, the slide attack, the jump attack, the melee attack, you know, the like throwing people around the screen, just I don't know, like you didn't have to do it.
Using their own bombs against them is always like a very satisfying thing. Like chucking bombs, you jump up, intercept it, chuck it back at them, and it's like, you know, then it takes them out. That's like such a cool feeling.
I say my little theory in a bunch of our videos, but I always think you can tell the great games, because like good games, it feels like the devs kind of hit the barrier of what the machine would let them do, and their game was whatever they could do. The amazing games always felt like their vision was realised, and they managed, they found a way to get what they thought onto the screen. And with Gunstar, I always think that, because it feels like all their ideas they had on paper, they've made it. It's like, why don't we chuck the enemies around as well? Yeah, that's in there. Why don't we slide tackles and like jumping kicks? Yeah, go on then, let's do that as well. Jumping off walls, chuck that in too. Hanging from walls, it just feels like there's no avenue of gameplay that's closed off. It's so it's so open.
That's the thing. It felt like they were off the leash, and they were just doing what they wanted. And stuff. And it was like, it felt limitless in what you were gonna expect next and stuff.
I reckon that's a good place to jump to start comparing it to some of the other big run and gun franchises. Not necessarily from the era, because they're really like the real big hitters are spread out, but because Gunstar's so good, you could kind of pick them up from any era. The big one, I guess, has to be Contra, specifically Contra 3, because
or Super Pro Protector
Or Super
in
Pro
the
Protector,
UK.
It's funny actually.
Which I have on the SNES, which is all right. Well, I don't want to say it's all right. I'll get some people seriously after me, but it really got eclipsed for me by Gunstar. So.
Speak your truth, my man. Speak your truth.
Yeah,
I'm sure the devs.
It's a really good game, but like Gunstar is just like, man.
Well, I guess. Hang on, let me look up who it was that worked on it. So, Hideyuki Suganami, who's like one of the main devs of Gunstar, did the enemies. He worked on Contra 3. Mitsuru Yaida worked. He's like Mr. Treasure. I think he's their main programmer on all of those big name games that we know from Treasure. Like they were both at Contra 3. I didn't write down that my goal was, so don't know. Maybe he wasn't, but they were like the two. As I understand it, someone can pick me up if I got this wrong, but they were the two main devs in Contra 3, and then they were the main sort of programmers and like lead sort of programmers for Gunstar. To the point where, did you read this as well? Saying like one of the reasons Gunstar does have that really cartoony round face anime look is because they really wanted to distance themselves from Contra and say like we really feel like we're going to end up making it too like Contra. And I'm like, you really didn't, guys. But anyway.
Yeah. Well, I love that, to be honest. I love the anime kind of like thing that they had going.
Yeah.
Because back then, it was like, it's not like now where anime is such a massive played out thing that people kind of like roll their eyes at. It was like, it was just creeping into the West, wasn't it? Like we kind of had like stuff like Manga Mania, like that magazine that was kind of like introducing this stuff. And like, I really liked that. And so that when Gunstar came out and it was kind of chock full of that kind of style, it was like, this looks really cool. And it's a bit of a shame because like just holding up the box now, the Western art is absolutely I mean, that's very Western, isn't it?
Can I just point out, are they like trying to rip us off with that logo? Because dude, that is a bit too similar.
That looks very familiar.
Yeah.
Like, right, let's call up the lawyers first thing in the morning. That is too close for comfort.
Obviously, any similarity in our logo is completely accidental, and please don't sue us. So, but yeah, like Contra 3, go on. You're gonna have to risk some ire. You're going to have to go for it, because we have to say, like, Contra 3 is massive. People adore it. It's one of those classic franchises. And here we are saying Gunstar basically dicks all over it. Prove it. Why?
Well, I mean, don't get me wrong, though. I do really like Contra. It was like, like seeing the original in the arcade was one of like those defining memories for me and stuff. Just like, just playing that opening level and then getting my butt handed me basically, and then go to my dad and ask for more money. But like, you know what I mean? It was like, it was just felt like for me, Gunstar just moved things along so much that I found it kind of difficult going back to like Pro Protector. And it's like I said, I really like this game, but it's like Gunstar was just something else. And it's in my top 10 games, like I say, like, and it's just like, you know what I mean?
I really like I'm going to talk specifically Contra 3 because I haven't played all of them, and this is the one I know the best, but like, I do really like Contra 3. It's very solid, it's very playable, like, it's slick, it's smooth, fast, like the weapons are cool, like the difficulty's about right,
Uses mode 7 and ticks all the boxes for the bells and whistles and stuff.
Everyone loves a bell and a whistle, you know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
And sorry, sounds a bit kinky. I think what it is, it's a bit like this. All right, it's going to sound a bit over the top, but it feels like a game like Contra 3 was almost. There was a template within which they could operate, and they did a very good job with standard tools. It was like, okay, you can run about, you can jump, you can have upgrades. They kind of gave them a toolkit and said, make a game out of that, and they did very well. Gunstar made its own template. I think that's the difference, isn't it? It feels like they invented some new ways of playing and some new tools and some new graphics and some speed. They didn't invent the genre, obviously, but they did create new openings. And that, I think, is the difference. Like Contra 3, like, it is fast. It does have multiple enemies on screen. Like, it does do a lot of the stuff Gunstar does, but just without those extras. It just doesn't have the extra bits. And Gunstar just says, you know, it's not good enough to just do the same thing again. Let's do the extra.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
The variety. Yeah, that's it. The variety in Gunstar. It's like I think we talked in Super Mario World, didn't we, about how the game was constantly evolving, and that's like very much what Gunstar does. It's like, you know, just when you think you're kind of settled and you know what's kind of going on, you then like get to the dice palace or something like that, and you're just like this thing after thing after thing after thing, and you're like, what?
Oh,
and you
man,
barely keep up.
See, I remember us getting to that dice palace, and like I wouldn't really say that Gunstar is that weird until you get to that. Some of the bosses are weird, but when we got there, I remember thinking, what the hell? This is just so. It's just such a off-piece thing that they've just chucked in. Yeah. Well, what about? Let's do some others then. So, like Rocket Knight, we obviously did in I think it was our last podcast whenever this goes out. But and you know, we did make comparisons. It also does some good new ideas, mixing up the genre. You know, it is kind of a platform with run and gun elements. It's kind of a run and gun with platform relevance. It's a hack and slash. It's, you know, it's not really quite the same genre at all, and that's good, right?
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's like, well, I mean, yeah, actually, you know, like completely randomly, did you ever play much of Nier Automata or Automata, depending on
of course
YouTube videos you play?
You could not talk to you and not play Nier Automata.
But like, this is going to be a really weird comparison, but the beginning part of that game really kind of had a little bit of a Gunstar vibe to me, because it's like it's chucking ideas at you. It's like one thing after the other, and it's like, you know, one minute you're a spaceship, and the next minute you're kind of flying into the screen, and then you're the main character, like 2B or whatever, taking out some stuff. And it was like, you know, it kind of almost felt like it would be hard pressed to say that it was inspired by Gunstar, but it had that kind of like flair about it, you know. And it was just like, yeah, I really enjoyed that element of it. And like when I started that game, I kind of was like, oh, this is a little bit Gunstar-y, and now I've forgotten what we were talking about.
I'm going to back you up, because maybe Gunstar specifically, it's a little bit of a stretch, but maybe. But wind the clock forwards, and once Treasure had done this several times, you know, once they'd kind of like, I'm going to say Dynamite Alley, maybe not the best example, but if you add in, certainly if you wind forward to Radiant Silvergun, to Silhouette Mirage, to I haven't played it much, but Bang.io, you know, they're just once Treasure had this reputation that exactly what we were saying about Gunstar, of just constantly chucking new ideas in, of having an extra hook, of just not just having one hook, but keep chucking hook after hook after hook. So that. You know, as a developer, I think people would have looked at what Treasure achieved and said, I want to be like that. You know, I just think they were an inspirational dev. There's no two ways about it.
And I think their prowess in like the bosses that they made kind of did like directly then inspire like Alien Soldier. Why does that name not come to me very easily?
Because it just doesn't sound right. It's an odd name. Anyway,
they need to readdress that. But anyway, but like it's like that game was literally like mainly like boss rush and stuff, and it was because like Treasure just did that whole boss thing so well that it kind of almost felt like, oh, this is our niche. I suppose it's a little bit like our channel. Once we think we're onto something, and then we find out like within a couple of videos we are very much not. And they kind of pushed into that direction. However, Alien Soldier goes against the time, because that actually was really good, even though it was so tough. Like I could never really get too far with it, but
it's a bit too brutal for me.
But again, it's like you know, they just let their imaginations run wild, didn't they, with this thing, like coming up with all these ideas for these bosses and stuff. And it was quite quite incredible, really. But I would just really like to be good at it, so I could get the most out of it.
Yeah, it's one of those you look at and you think, I do feel like there's a good game there. I just can't unlock it because it's just so damn hard.
You know, we're at that point where Mean Machines were when they originally reviewed it. We need to be like the couple of months later when they realised they needed to re-review it because they hadn't like kind of quite cottoned on to all its good points or something.
It just really reminded me of the bit at the end of Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey where they're like, maybe we should learn to play, and then they disappear up in time. And when they come back, they're really good at playing Alien Soldier.
Wait, so do we just need to get Eddie Van Halen on or something like that? I know, it's a bit of a feat these days, I guess, isn't it?
I mean, yeah, it probably wouldn't have the same effect if he creaked on. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah.
Okay. Other comparisons though, Metal Slug. That is a good comparison because that is like it does have the manic nature of Gunstar, and I guess to an extent did Gunstar look across to Metal Slug and also kind of think, you know, can we be inspired? I don't know. But
which was around first? Was that around?
Ah, wait. Yeah, good point. Don't know. Because
I
reverse that
know
claim.
the
Maybe they didn't. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember the Metal Slug games being on the Saturn, so that was like later. But I don't know whether or not the arcade versions might have been.
Well, that's the thing.
I can't remember.
The arcades are definitely earlier than that, but God knows. Anyway, but the point is, I think it's quite a good comparison, just in terms of like the manic nature of it, because there's a hell of a lot going on. You know, big explosions, all that.
Yeah.
And I know Metal Slug has like a massive fan base, and I do really like it. I guess it just sort of. It goes back to that thing about just Treasure just seemed so not effortless, but so able to just do everything they wanted and not get bogged down in it. It still stayed fresh and quick. Metal Slug just felt a little like they wanted to have showpiece moments in it, and that kind of like interrupted the gameplay for me. Not loads, but just in the way like Gunstar, you literally just raced. Oh, here's an amazing boss. Oh, fight, carry on. You know, Metal Slug was a little bit more like, oh, now this huge explosion's going to happen. Just stop playing for a minute while that happens. You know, and I say a minute, it's like a couple of seconds, but it just felt that tiny bit less. You know, tiny bit. Don't shout at me. You know?
And just talking about the explosions as well, I just got to give like props to the soundtrack for Gunstar Heroes, because not just the music was incredible, but like the sound effects as well. It was so intense because of the music as well. It wasn't just, I mean, there was so much going on the screen. It's like explosions like everywhere and stuff like that. You know, your ears are just getting like affronted by like, you know, constant like barrages of sound effects and things like that. But the thing is, it's like none of it was tiresome. The music in the game is amazing. It's so good. I've actually been playing Gunstar Future Heroes recently. Upcoming video, bit of an insight there into the future of the channel. Yes, nice. Indeed. But like, you know, a lot of the soundtrack of that game is just like remixes, like new, like updated versions of the soundtrack for Gunstar Heroes, because it's so strong. Like the music is just unreal. It's like the tunes are just like, actually there's a very good video, which maybe we'll link it in the description, but some guy has like kind of like linked a lot of tracks together and made this very incredible like piece of music like from the soundtrack of this game, and it's I would very much recommend it. But anyway, I digress, but the music is amazing.
Yeah, it is.
Anyway,
because let me just check his name. Norio Hanzawa, is that him? So for the sound, Satoshi Barata. I don't know why I'm trying to do the accent, but Hanzawa, who was on loads of other games, Dynamite Heady, Yu Yu Hakusho, Alien Soldier, Gunstar Heroes, Silhouette Mirage, Rakigeki Showtime, Bangai. You know, he was, I mean, the whole crew were mostly on those. But you're right, he apparently had a brief to just make music that just never stops, and like the game, and 100%. The thing is, it's not... it doesn't feel like a repetitive beat, you know. It's not non-stop in the way like some kind of heavy techno house dance track or anything, because it does have that kind of like melody snaking through it. But it's not really a melodic music, but it does have just like little fills and lead kind of going through it, doesn't it, to keep it interesting. And I mean,
I kind of feel like a Treasure had as much of a handle on the sound of the game as they did with the visuals and stuff. And it's like, and that spills into like stuff like Dynamite Heady, where it's like, again, like that had stuff in it that I'd never really heard on the Mega Drive. Like some of the I think they had like a sample of an electric guitar, and it was so crisp that it was like, you know what I mean? You play some of the early Mega Drive games, and when they've got like speech samples or something like that, it's very distorted and stuff. It's like, you know, it's at like a low bit rate or something like that. But Treasure just somehow managed to get this extra kind of like bit of juice out of the Mega Drive. It's like all the speech in Dynamite Head, like was it like, you got a secret bonus point or something like that, and it's like all the samples, like it's like Treasure just somehow just eluded polish in everything that they did on the Mega Drive, and it was just next level.
You get the sense they never let a single loose bit of code find its way in, because they just kept everything so tight. And you're right, like look at Gunstar. I don't think it had any speech, but it did have those like little shout effects, didn't it? Like hi, yeah, and all that. And again,
it's got like a bit of reverb on it or something. Maybe that kind of like masks the bit rate or something, or any kind of distortion.
But it works. Yeah, it just sounds. It does. Right, it just sounds great. But you're bang on, because I think the sound of the music, they're not kind of, I suppose they're not obvious things you pick out the first time you play it. They're just there and they're perfectly good. And then you come to realise how great they are. I
used to just cycle through that soundtrack.
Yeah.
Plug my headphones into the Mega Drive and be sitting there like late at night just listening to these pieces of music. It was like as good as chucking on like an iconic album. Like, you know, I'd be mixing up like Appetite for Destruction or something with the Gunstar Heroes soundtrack, and that is like, it was good to me.
We must make sure to link that video mention, because I haven't seen it and I would like to see it as well. But I could see how it would work. It's that kind of music, you know, like you have that remix of the BBC News soundtrack, and it's kind of, you know, BBC News music is just news music, but then it's just got, I'm sure musical people will be able to explain this, but it's got something that just works. It's got such a good hook that it can then be turned into a song. And that's kind of it with this music on Gunstar as well, isn't it? It's like, it's doing what it does, but if you took it apart, you'd see how good the hooks were in it. Yeah. Anyway, I'm showing myself up here because I don't know about music. You know, but I should just let you do this.
You used to be like a music journalist, didn't you? Or something like, what? Are these people hearing this right now? Because
I think, as this channel proves, you don't need to know anything to get on the internet. You know, whatever. You know, I'm going to take let me mention one more, because I mentioned it before, and I am going to make the comparison to Cuphead, because it's obviously like completely nothing to do with each other time-wise. You know, what is there, like 20, 30 years or whatever, doing my maths, 30 years, isn't there, between like something in the 2020s and something in the 1990s, 30 years. It's late, whatever. But for me, there is a massive comparison between them, because Cuphead is obviously modern, it's got all the graphical power, it doesn't really need to to have trickery in it to look good. Obviously they've spent a lot of time on it, you know, the graphic style is like 1930s cartoons and stuff. It's very good in itself, but the point being, modern games can kind of do what they like now. And so for me, one of the first things is, I wouldn't say it echoes or apes Gunstar Heroes because it looks so different, but there's something in the way it plays, like the sort of constant forward nature of it that's similar. I don't know, the weapons are very simple in Cuphead, but the bosses are very clever and very intricate as well. And I guess I sort of sit them side by side and I think it just shows how amazing Gunstar is for me. That genuinely, if you flip them round and Gunstar was coming out and it was the game, you know, there hadn't been a run and gun for ages, and then this game came out looking really slick and cool and just had all these hooks in it, I honestly feel like it would just have been as big a deal as Cuphead was. Yeah. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, man, I need to check out Cuphead because I've not played it. It's like, I mean, the most I know about is that video of like some game journalist. Was it like from IGN or something who sucked and he reviewed it and he clearly had no idea how to play games or something? So take his word at your peril, I guess. But I mean, but like it did have a buzz, didn't it, that game? So I should really check it out.
I think it only sticks in mind because it's got quite a Twitch following, because it's rock hard in places, and you really have to learn it to get through it, I think is the secret to it. But yeah, that would be the point. It was kind of a bit of a kitsch cult classic in a way, because it just looked unique, played unique, did something that wasn't really around at the time. And I just think, man, genuinely, you could flip it round 30 years later and Gunstar would look, feel and play as good as that. And I just think, to me, whether they were influenced by it or not, I don't know, because they're not exactly like for like in any sense of the word, but I do kind of feel like the standard Gunstar set has never been bettered. And it's like when Cuphead came out, I had all this rave about it, and I still don't think it's been bettered. Anyway, that was my big point. Right, I'm going to take a massive switch to say something that we were talking about beforehand, which we've got to mention, which is Treasure's relationship with Sega, because Treasure got their foot in the door of game development through the McDonald's game technically, but through Gunstar Heroes. This is the thing that launched them onto the world. And that was through Sega. And it's always seemed ever since they've had some kind of special bond with them. You know what I mean? What do we know about it? Because we've talked about it a little bit. What makes the Sega and Treasure relationship special? Or at least, why do we think it's special?
Well, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I kind of thought that they were like Sega in-house, to be honest, back in the day.
Yeah.
It was like,
in a way they were, because, I mean, they did the McDonald's game and they did another game.
Yeah.
So I can't remember which one it was. Was it that Light Crusader? I think one of those.
Oh, yeah. They did something like that. Yeah. But, it's like all their games were coming out on Sega, machines, the Mega Drive, really. And then, later the Saturn and Dreamcast as well, didn't they? So they were, kind of pretty faithful to Sega, I guess, faithful in their console days. So yeah, but it's I always thought they were kind of like maybe I didn't think they were in-house, they weren't like Sonic Team or something like that, but they were definitely good friends with them. And I guess without the internet, we just had standard print magazines, and if stuff wasn't covered in them, I guess it was a little harder to come by the information. So this whole thing about how they were a bit fatigued with Konami and the way they were operating and things like that, and that eventually pushed them to make their own development house, who ended up in Sega's yard. It's it's been very interesting reading about it, isn't it? So,
finding out about it afterwards. And we definitely had the sense that there was some kind of special link, because we got this on Sega, we got Guardian Heroes, we then got Radiant Silvergun, and there was they did do stuff on PlayStation. So we were saying before about that Rakaki Showtime, which is which is a cracker, and I don't know what else they did on it, to be honest, but and later on they've obviously gone off and done stuff elsewhere with what is it, Sin and Punishment and a few other games they've done, which
on the Wii, was it?
But they felt similar. There's something about the ethos though as well, right? Like Sega games were always had a little bit of crazy, loads of inventive, always technically impressive, sort of pushing the envelope. Those things about Treasure, they felt very Sega, didn't they? And they
it's like they were at home there. They found their place.
And they have said of them, haven't they? Sega just let us do what we want. And it's the same. You see a lot of interviews with the in-house Sega people saying, they basically said, "Go make a game, let me get on with it." Which is
I'm very glad they did.
Very glad they did. Yeah. Which is why we said at the start, though, that first bit of the relationship was so ironic that they did turn them down and didn't take a punt, because it seems like that's what they went on to do after that. But yeah.
Actually, and before we move on, I was going to just shout out the Game Gear port by M2, who I didn't even realize at the time that M2 was a thing. It's I know them obviously nowadays from their 3D ports to the 3DS and stuff like that, and the stuff that's come later. They've moved into all kinds of areas. I think they did some of the Castlevania collections and stuff like that on modern consoles and things. But they're like the masters, aren't they, now of getting these old games to run really well on different hardware.
That is who I thought they were, a modern team that had been put together to do conversions.
Totally, but apparently they were back. They were formed back in 1991, and they did the Game Gear port of Gunstar Heroes, which never came out the rest of the world. It came out in Japan, which is really annoying because, like, I remember back kind of like in probably around 2000, I saw it in a shop, like it was in a cabinet, and I think it was like it was already pricey, I think it was, but I was like, oh, there's Gunstar Heroes on the Game Gear. I would be interested in picking that up, and it's like, not for that price. And then I went on my way, and I didn't realize that we never got it over here. I mean, I would have thought it would have been in limited numbers, but I didn't realize that it was actually Japan exclusive. So that's super annoying that I never got it. But you know, with the wonders of emulation, we could.
I know, that's the genius of it. But you're right. I mean, if they struggled to get the Mega Drive one out, I can imagine even harder on to get the Game Gear one. But yeah, I haven't played it yet. After your rave review, I'm definitely going to give it a go. But I had heard it was great, and I'd say one of the Game Gear micros, you know, that sort of Sega 60th birthday micro that they released. What I think it's 5 editions, and one of them is like Gunstar Heroes led. And I was staring at it on eBay last week. They're not crazy expensive, and
oh really?
I think the only thing that put me off is I read something saying they're basically too small. Like you can't really,
they are so small.
You can't really play them. So it's like,
yeah, they look tiny. I mean, like when they first showed off that batch of, was it an initial batch of 4 or 5 or something? I was like, oh, like, you know, I'm always like interested by new Sega hardware. It's like, I was looking at it, I was like, you know, that is too small.
I think the screen is like a postage stamp. So just imagine playing Gunstar on it with all that stuff going on.
Yeah.
I mean,
oh man,
yeah, that's tricky, man. I don't know about that. So
yeah,
but I was tempted nonetheless. I'll have to have a go on the emulator thing. So, I don't know. Well, look, there's probably a million and one things about it that we haven't covered, but we hopefully are like rabid raving and enthusiastic warblings of like convince anyone who hasn't played it to go and give it a go immediately, because it's just amazing. For good form, for continuity, I will ask you, would you still play it today? And whether that anyone is in any doubt, what are you saying?
Well, can you guess that I might say yes? It's I mean, it's in my top 10 games. I mean, I'm definitely more a Mean Machine Sega Magazine and CVG in terms of my appreciation of it, who gave it like 93, 94, 92% respectively. I'm definitely not an Edge person who gave it 6 out of 10, which I can't even believe. So I would definitely say yes, I will play it today and then some. I'll be playing it for many years. So, yeah.
It's another one of those that you just get a hankering for it. You know, there's a bunch of Mega Drive games specifically kind of get me in that way, mainly because they're so easy to play, like with emulators and the kit set up at home, that I've just got a million ways I could play them, whereas some of them, you know, the more modern ones are a bit trickier. So I just get a hankering. Like every few months there'll be a reason to it'll crop up, someone will talk about it. We'll look at our logo and think how they ripped us off.
Yeah, exactly. I know they're in big trouble.
Those guys have got a lot to answer for. So, but yeah, I don't think a year's gone by where I haven't played it through a few times. It's just a cracker, and it just shows you like that variety really does help, doesn't it? Keeps you playing. So
yeah.
Now,
even now,
variety is the cornerstone of all good things, as it is with our channel. So how varied can we be? Where are we going to go next? Prove the variety.
Well, we are upping it from 16 to 128 bit.
That's a lot of bit.
That's a lot of bit, yeah. But we are coming out strong with some Power Stone action from Capcom. So
yeah, you do.
It was, I think it was one of the launch games on the Dreamcast in Japan, wasn't it?
It was early doors.
Well, not far. Yeah. So we're going to have that version actually, and I'll probably be ranting a lot about how the PAL version is cropped at 50 hertz with big ugly borders, unless I run it on my Japanese Dreamcast, where then it seems to crunch it into the full 60 hertz and makes it run as it should be. So that's how I'm going to be playing it for this little book club.
I don't know whether that's you getting that out your system. Are we still going to have that next time? We'll do a whole feature on that.
Question.
Everyone loves a bit of 50 hertz dibbs anger management session, or whatever you call it. But I mean,
Bane of my life.
I mean, if it ain't showing yet, we love a game where anything goes, and Power Stone is definitely one of those. I just, yeah, I think there are some threads you could draw, but the main one is it's a damn fine game. So we look forward to playing that for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm all hyped now. I'm all hyped.
Me too.
Can we fit in a game of Gunstar? Don't know.
Oh yeah, without question, I'm going to be playing this like in about 5 minutes from now. So. But with all that being said, well, this has been great.
Nearly didn't let him go.